Hi there, Karen Lovely here, and I'm doing a quick impromptu podcast that it was in my mind, and I had the intention to do it, but it actually got sparked when I received this amazing text message from one of my clients who's been on a podcast before, and it was really interesting as to the specific compliment, which I'll let him talk about. I just want to read it, and it just came in unsolicited. He says, I so appreciate your dedication to the calls and to bettering men's lives. And that is one of the podcasts I wanted to do as to why I have been intentionally focusing on empowering men. And so we're going to get into that. But before we do, I want to say, hey, yo, what's up, Chris? Thanks for being here. Yo. So what prompted you, to specifically say that? Because it just kind of felt like it came out of the blue, and I so appreciate it.
I was re-listening to the men's call that we had, and was thinking about, from my perspective, the life that I have and how it's changed as a result of coaching. And then also in my mind, I said, okay, well, what about these other guys that you're helping? What is their life like, and how can this be a benefit to them? And then just kind of seeing that and then hearing those guys talk from the call really prompted me to take a step back and actually look at this as a whole and see just how amazing it is. And then on top of that, your dedication, your work ethic, your commitment, your focus on the calls and showing up all the time and being, in your zone every time. I don't know, it's just special. And that's what I wanted to compliment you for. And that's why I sent you that acknowledgement. Because, I don't know, you just prompt so much deeper thought into lives and how we live them. So I wanted to share that with you and make sure that I wanted you to know that I don't take it for granted because I see it. And that's why I do send those acknowledgments to you, is because I never want you to feel that way, like I'm taking you for granted.
Oh, that's so sweet, and I really appreciate that. And would you say that it's now because this is in reference to my Elite Evolved Entrepreneur Men's Masterclass that is separate, and we started this series. Do you think it has, because you are in formal coaching and you have been killing it, over and over again, but to be in a group with other men, like your demographic, do you feel like it also sparks when you hear the other guys on the call speak? Do you think that has something to do with it at all?
It does, yeah, because, typically I'm listening to our conversations instead of a conversation that, you've had with those guys. So, yes, hearing other people and how they go through the coaching and what impact it has on them in particular is really eye-opening. It's one of those things that, there's like that saying, like, you don't realize what you've got till it's gone. But, one thing with like re-listening to calls and stuff like that is you get to realize and understand what's really going on in the moment when you're outside of that moment. And so kind of that reflective way of looking back on it is a great way to see just how it is changing people's lives and just how thankful that I am for it. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And I do want to, really talk about why I have this hashtag empowering you through us. And that's what this is about, especially when we can relate at some level. So it's the relatability. And there's one thing for me to coach you and you, in our one-on-one private coaching, but then when we hear somebody else that we can relate to, it somehow catapults things to hear it from somebody else. So, for instance, I can say something, I can put it together, but when you hear someone else say it from their point of view, it sinks in even deeper. Or, it's just another touch point where you can have it click even more and get even a greater aha moment and make even deeper connections for yourself. Does that make sense?
It does, and I see that, so it's like so accurate. That really helps me, gives me a new perception.
Yes.
To go, so like when I do get in a situation, I can see where someone else's perception of the situation is more beneficial to me, and then so now I can reframe in that way to that particular perception, as opposed to the one that I've been using that has proven itself over and over again not to work.
Right.
So it's awesome. The relatability is totally there.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you that's what catapulted, shortcutted my whole transformational journey. And what it was, because I've been in and out of therapy, throughout my life, and the therapist doesn't share their life's experience. They, it's almost like they listen, great. They ask me questions, great. I answer the questions, great, but there's no true relatability. And when I got into this type of work, the leaders, the ones at the front of the room on the stage, when they shared where they were and where they are now, as I'm looking at them on the stage, that's what did it for me. That was the game changer. That was the, not just game changer, that absolutely shortcutted everything in terms of me really understanding myself through them, because they were vulnerable. They were sharing their breakdowns. They were sharing the pain and agony they were going through. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if they can do it, I can do it. And that's why this is my model. I feel it's more powerful than anything because I've lived it. And so to hear it from somebody else, it doesn't even matter if they're our demographic. If you're human with a human brain and someone sharing their story of the pain and agony or the things they're dealing with, and we can relate to that, but then they share what the breakthrough was or what the insight was that had them have a huge major result occur in their life or breakthrough, then we're like, oh my gosh, yes. So it's a combination of the two, is the relatability to hear somebody's before and after, the insights that they got, and then the results that followed suit is so empowering and inspiring. And truth be told, it is the fastest, best way to empower ourselves is through someone else. Okay? Yeah. And you understand that, through and through, yes?
Totally.
Yeah. And I know this men's group is specifically designed to cater to men only at a specific level of mindset and dedication and commitment. And in a way, I get to be the head coach of my up-and-coming Olympic team, if you will, because I like to say that I train the Olympic mindset for the Olympics of life. And that's something that just resonates with me as an athlete and, professional dancer. And so I love that mindset. And so and this group can relate to that. But I really want to emphasize how I sense that when you get to hear the other guys on the team, so to speak, or in the group share, it hits you at a new level. Yes?
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is there anything more you want to say about that in terms of what you've then benefited and how?
Well, in particular, like Daniel shared something from the homework that we had from the call that really resonated with me. And it was that the relationship to money and the relationship to father are so interchangeable that it's not even funny. So when he mentioned that, I reread my whole homework assignment and just took out money and put in father in the whole thing, and it was so accurate.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, like insights from the call that you shared was also really helped me even piece it together better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is, from the avoidance of like father or money, I spend money in order to get it out, to prove myself right that, hey, money's not around me.
Yes. Like you don't have a healthy relationship to and with money, so you sabotage it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that is awesome. And as many times as I keep saying over and over again, our relationship to ourself and our inner child and our relationship to our mother and father and mother, and then there's a relationship to money. I can say it over and over again, but something miraculous happens when somebody else says it from their point of view. And now it doesn't matter as long as you're human and we can relate because we're human. That's what does it and brings us to the next level and the next level and the next level. Yes?
Yeah, and hearing Daniel say it in particular was really fascinating to me to have that aha moment, because I can't tell you how many times I've heard you say it. Maybe 32.
Exactly.
So it's really interesting, and I'm always intrigued by how those breakthroughs come about,
Yeah, absolutely. And I only, teach and train and preach and practice, what is effectively worked for me. And I just transfer the information, to others. And like, I just have to say it's my story and I'm sticking to it. I noticed that when massive genius coaches, mentors, leaders are doing the same thing in terms of contributing to inspire others, the ones I really connect to and have the most respect for and I'm in awe of, are the ones who are willing to say, I went through the same thing. Here's what happened to me. Here's what I lost. Here's what, where I bottomed out. And then here's what had me start to rise back up, back to the top, even better, more powerful, stronger, happier than ever. And then I'm like, ooh, I love you. It's like,
Yeah. That so resonates.
Because I don't like this. You sit there, Mr. or Ms. Therapist, and you're trying to tell me things, and then I can't relate though, because you're the therapist, and I'm in pain. It helps to be heard at some level, but it's not sustainable, is my experience. It has not been sustainable, and truth be told, especially because my biggest therapy story of being in therapy for 5 years, walking in saying my sister's dying and I don't know what to do, that was day one. 5 years later, like clockwork on that couch, literally, there was a couch, and we'd sit and we'd talk and face each other. But I've also been in Freudian psychiatry sessions, and I was laying on the couch and she would sit behind me taking notes, and I'd never even see her, which was really bizarre, but it worked because I was suicidal. It was my first bout with, wanting to, just mulling over attempting suicide. So it worked, but I never got the answers. In 5 years, in this particular case, I didn't get the answers that I sought, and I was so frustrated. Although it helped, and I learned some wonderful things, and it did get me to the next level, because it didn't give me the answers. I was on a mission at some level that I didn't even know to get the answers. And that's also what continues to feed into my dedication, my burning desire, my obsessive work ethic, and wanting to always level up, is that ambitious passion to understand whether it's the answer for somebody else or not. If it resonates with me as answering a question I have within me, I'll take it. And then I feel this cohesiveness. I feel this sense of connectedness to myself. And then that makes me feel worthy and happy from within, and a sense of peaceful meaningfulness. And then I can never ever lose but that's how my brain works. And I believe, this is what attracted you to hiring me as your quote unquote head coach, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So I also want to talk about, so in terms of dealing with men in general, I had to really look and dig deep. This has been a long time coming, meaning within the past 2-3 years, I really set out, so I would say maybe 3 years ago, I'm like, you know what? I really want to coach men. I'm a stand for the men in the world. And, I can say, yeah, they might need it more, but then if I dig deeper and it was more of honoring my own relationship with my own father. And I have 2 brothers, but it's really my dad, because there's a lot of really great things that I got from him. And then there were a lot of things early on I knew weren't so good in terms of his infidelity, cheating on my mom, and I knew it intuitively. And there were things that didn't work, that didn't make any sense to me. And I got to be honest, it was the time when I thought my mom, finally when it came out and he was cheating, he was paying for an apartment in New York for the mistress. But then she told me, yeah, I said, how'd you find out? She said, I looked at the credit card statements, like, okay, seriously? You got a PhD, dad, dude. Like, seriously? You've got a master's degree and a PhD. You did advanced studies. You're like a genius. But how could you be so stupid as to make such obvious mistakes, not cover your tracks? Like, this is what I'm thinking early on, as a teenager, going, okay, truth be told, at some level, you're an idiot. Like, seriously? What is wrong with you? First of all, don't cheat. Okay, that's number 1. Okay, coward. But number 2, if you're going to, how stupid can you be to get caught? Don't even get me started on that, right? But the point was, I need to understand that stupidity or that illogical, irrational, thinking that made no sense to me. And, we can look at statistics, but back to really idolizing my father on so many levels for where he's been. He's a self-made man, came here with nothing, didn't even speak English. There's a lot of things that I think so highly of, but then there's this complete opposite side where it's just like, oh my God, how stupid can you be to sabotage? And what we need to know is he had the mistress. They broke up. 11 years later, they get back together, but when they broke, okay, they get back together, and then my father calls for the divorce, thinking he's in love with the mistress. And then we're all like, okay, that's not going to work. And sure enough, it didn't. So that's what's so crazy, is he's thinking, right? Oh, this is it. I'm in love with her. Divorces my mother, goes with the mistress. That doesn't work out because it was a dead end. He thought she was the one for him. And in fact, she wasn't. He was still searching. That's the bottom line. He was still searching for something that wasn't inside of him, connected to himself, to be happy at some level. Yeah. And so based on my own life, to see this happen and to be part of it and witness it, knowing it would never work. Like, I knew from the moment he said, I want a divorce, that it would never work, because he was so blindsided and blinded, and had so many blind spots. And sure enough, I didn't have to do anything. It failed, and not only failed, blew up in his face. And you know what's weird is that he never truly got over my mother. He's still incomplete with the relationship. He is single to this day. There's no one else. And he, when we speak, he'll kind of ask about her. And I know he's never gotten over, and statistics show that too. That over 60% of divorced men, this is one study, said that they would absolutely take the first wife back after they left for, a new model, a different model, a younger model. And so there's something to be said for that. But that, it doesn't matter. Statistics or no statistics, when you see this type of life, and it just is horrifying. And then it scares the crap out of me because I don't want to have that same problem, of being unfulfilled in the relationship, in a marriage, and still searching, and then sabotage it so badly, and then still be incomplete about it. That's crazy making, right? So here I see, back to the men thing, what I do know is, it's in honor of my father, but it's also this whole thing that Dr. David Gruden and I did podcasts on, in terms of, he says spirit creates wealth, wealth creates money, and in our men's group, we are highly focused on entrepreneurialism, but elite, evolved entrepreneurialism, and specifically money. Okay? He said, it resonates with me. Spirit creates wealth, wealth creates money. What I find over and over again is this connection to spirit, especially with men, the spiritual side. I also want to say the spiritual side, the passionate side, the connectedness to the heart. And that's what I saw missing in my father, truth be told, is that there was this grave disconnect to his own passions, his own heart, and trusting himself, right? To make the most powerful choices and decisions in his life, not to sabotage himself so badly that, it looks like he's going to die, without having fulfilled that part of himself. So that's not just for men, that's for women and men, but I know there's a lot of resources for women. And I do my work with women in one regard, but I'm absolutely intentionally proactive in empowering men in this spiritualness, if you will, or in this connectiveness to heart and passion and self-worth, and especially relationship to self and the little boy within, the little child within, and then next level, a profound relationship to father, and mother. And the common denominator that I found over and over again is not having a powerful, relatable, connective, respectful, honorable relationship to father. And then the statistics, gangs and prison, it's the common denominator throughout. So I just thought, okay, you know what? This is my jam. I'm going for it. And I believe it works. So the reason I wanted you on this podcast is because you're actually kind of in a way read my mind, because I was about to record the podcast and I got your text and I'm like, whoop, let's combine the two. And then I wanted to really put it out there. It's not like I'm only dealing with men and coaching men, but I see that I certainly can be a contribution in this area so that I am part of the solution, not the problem, in terms of, happy, healthy humans, happy, healthy human, so to speak. And I don't know. I don't even need to justify it. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. Any comments, observations on anything I just said, Chris?
No, just appreciation for the work you do and commitment.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. And in terms of part of telling my story of my father, I heard some ooh, did anything hit you there?
Well, yes, in particular with relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Just that whole searching aspect of getting into a relationship, thinking someone is the one, and then finding out that, well, I'm actually still searching for who I am, and we don't really mesh well. And the reason why it resonates with me is, in the past, I've had several relationships where I've had that realization. Now looking back, I recognize that, where I was still searching for who I was, and what ended up happening was I was little by little giving myself to this person so that they had control of me. And then it basically became where they were controlling who I was becoming. It was like a battle back and forth, right? I want to do this. No, I think you should do this. And then I'm having a tussle with that. Well, which one's better? But I never, now that I look back, in those situations, because I gave so much of myself to someone else, it really became letting go of who I wanted to be to then form someone who they wanted me to become. And so hearing you say that, it's super deep dive, but that's really how it sits with me. And I feel the exact same way, right? Like I want to make sure that I know who I am. I'm good with myself. And then when I have relationships with women, that it's more of like, hey, here's who I am, and take it or leave it. Not like, well, let me give a little bit to you so that you can kind of do what you want with it, and then mold me who you want me to become. Like that's not how I want to do things. And I see, having been through it, how it was detrimental to me. Don't even get me started, Karen.
I know, right?
but yeah. So
and we all can relate to that. We all can relate on conforming in such a way to keep the relationship going, and then we're really sacrificing ourself, SELF, aren't we? And then we're like, wait, that is completely counterproductive, counterintuitive, and it doesn't work. It's not sustainable. Not sustainable.
That's the main thing, is sustainability. It's so easy to get into something very temporary. But what I have realized too, and this is kind of the flip side of the coin, is by being myself, I have attracted unsolicited women into my life. I'm not actively out there like trying to pull women, but it just so happens by me being me, they are attracted.
Yeah, that's magnified. Like that's really elevated on, like, so obviously. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So the more I understand myself, the more I would say, like, the more magnetizing I become, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yes. So that's the whole thing. The more connected you are to yourself and your inner child, and you understand yourself and your mindset and who you are and who you're not. Okay. I love the 90-10 rule. 90% mental, 10% physical. And this across the board over and over again as we study the brain. It shows up. The elite part, the professional, proficient part, comes down to the sustainable mindset over and over and over again, backed by brain science. And that's my jam, is to understand how that works for sustainability. And so when you have this and you're showing up more confidently, yes, more focused in who you are and why, and who you're not and why, and you're okay with it, yes, because nobody's perfect, no one ever will be. How attractive, if we just think about that, how attractive is that? Super attractive, isn't it? When
it is.
Yes.
And so there's two sides to it, right? Owning who you are, and then also owning who you're not. Mm-hmm. And I think when you're able to own who you're not, people really, and you say no to people because, so for example, someone says, hey, I need to do my accounting. Well, no, that's not who I am. That's not what I do or whatever. But for some reason, hearing someone say no or resist a request from you, mm-hmm. One, you gain more respect, but two, you kind of have this like, I kind of want to be around them more because they're actually very direct and they're very upfront, and I know their intentions, and it's like there's nothing hidden, and they're not just blowing smoke up my butt.
I know. Is there something we can't even really articulate it, but there is this underlying energy that pulls us toward that person, and it is a magnetic force. It is, the law of attraction. I call, mine is the principles of magnetization, right? And yes, you have absolutely, and it's not even your primary focus. You've absolutely become more magnetic and attractive to women who are, now here's a difference, is they're like blatantly from energetically throwing themselves, like physically though, but they're throwing themselves at you. Isn't that the difference? Like where it's like a no-brainer. Sometimes you're like, I don't know, is she into me? She's not into me? I can't really
Exactly.
tell.
It's very, very obvious.
Yeah. It's almost like, wait a minute, is this even real?
Yeah, right. Like, let me pinch myself because this is really happening. Yeah.
Right. And you're just like, excuse me, I think you just passed the line of scrimmage there. Like, what happened? And then you're just like, wow. And that's exactly it. So it's not just with, relationships to women. It's relationship to everyone and even everything, which I think, it's like a dog or a cat. So it's really, yes, it's, it's just the perks, like you can never ever lose and you can never ever go wrong from my standpoint. Yes. And I just want to emphasize how radically profound and powerful it is to understand your mind And the mind is the brain in action. So to understand basic brain function and how it functions and computes information and then doesn't compute other information. And then if the brain, which I believe and what I've studied is the mind is the brain in action. So now we have the mindfulness and the consciousness, yes, and understanding how the two work together and to synchronize them for good and not evil, in an empowering way, not in a disempowering way. Now we're into the whole vibrational frequency. Brains pick up the vibration of other brains, and that's what creates this magnetic force, if you will, and that energy comes forth, you exude it, other brains key in, or even people in energy key in. It's just very attractive. That's all we want to say. And compelling and intriguing. And I love saying intoxicating. And then boom, boom, boom. And so my big intention is to actually train, more people, more humans, but specifically at this time, more men, because I feel this part gets so lost in so many ways that's different, and I have that's a whole nother podcast for another time, but I just see based on my dad's life and the men, I've dated and even the men in my life and my guy friends, I see a common denominator. And so far, so awesomely, magnificently terrific in terms of if I can be part of the solution to have, as Dr. Gruder says, that spirit handled, and the spirit creates wealth and the wealth creates money. Hello. And again, that's for women too, but somehow, and I've read and studied about that spiritual side is more overall inherent in women, and that's part of the draw in heterosexual relationships in terms of male female, of why men choose to be with women and vice versa. But let's just say it's that spiritual energy, however you want to define it, yes. And I do believe there's a need for more men to develop that side, because I'm all about strengthening weaknesses, so to speak, or strengthening the points in our life that hasn't given us the results that we consciously seek and desire most. And then developing that spiritual side, then you can never ever lose, because then you have peace and fulfillment and meaningfulness within yourself, and you're connected to your human existence. And then boom, that equates into wealth. So your wealth, I call it currency. You attracting these women, and they're and then we're talking women of all ages, whether they think of you as a romantic partner or even a son or, an affiliate, or, what I'm saying, or a coworker. That is wealth. And at some level, that wealth converts into the money aspect. So anyway, that's what I'm trying to convey here and kind of put out in the ether, if you will. And and I'm so honored that you're part of that and you so get it and you're willing to train for it, because 90-10 rule. Yes, training, understanding the mind and the brain in action, and not just the brain in general, which you must, that's the thing that's going to give us the leading edge and is cutting edge. And they're only just recently, within the past 11 years, really seeing how profound the brain is. More so in the last 11 or so years than the past 5,000 years. And so that's like, whoa. And so here it is to train people and be specific, kind of like stick to my niche or intention, feels really good to me. So thank you for being part of that and for recognizing it and acknowledging me, which I truly appreciate and is priceless. Thank you. Any last words of wisdom? We're going to wrap it up.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah. You're incredible. Thank you.